everybody, and welcome back to Eggs. Today's special guest is a very interesting one. Co-founder and CEO of Personal AI, Suman Kanuganti. Suman is a creator and entrepreneur that is passionate about solving problems for humans by converging multiple emerging technologies. His experience spans open source projects, blockchain, robotics, AI, AR, wearable tech, video streaming, and fintech. Previous to Personal AI, Suman also founded IraTech, recognized as one of Time Magazine's best inventions and Fast Company's world-changing ideas, where he scaled AI and AR technology to assist the blind and low vision community. Suman's latest venture, Personal AI, is a true digital extension of a creator, trained on their own data and reflective of their own unique voice. Combined with Web3 technology, Personal AI is enabling a new creator economy by reimagining how people create, collaborate, and monetize their creativity. Joining us today for a discussion about the role artificial intelligence will play in our future, ethical implications of AI generally, and how Personal AI moves beyond them, how to create your own digital self, and so much more. Please join us in welcoming to the show, Suman Kanuganti. Suman, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely.
Hey, can you give us a brief history on your work background, how you got into what you do?
Certainly. By background, I'm an engineer. By passion, I always say that I like to solve hard human problems, which is more or less like, what are the things that human needs and what are the things that we're missing. In my previous company, I built a company called IRA, AIRA. It's a technology for people who are blind and low vision. It's essentially like, filling missing visual information for people who cannot see. So that's kind of where majority of my passion sort of lies. Like, how do we use technology for solving hard human problems that makes a real meaningful impact? I have an MBA background. I have a robotics background. I'm an engineer. I did Netflix before Netflix existed. I did a lot of Web3 work as well. So I think it's a mostly generalist, a combination of technologist and business background with mostly product experiences.
Nice.
Yeah, no, very cool. I mean, would you consider yourself as having been always entrepreneurial, or is that something that maybe didn't come as naturally to you with an engineering background?
That's a very interesting question, right? I think it probably was always in there, but for me to discover it, it took probably some time and some career. I grew up in India, and I came to the United States to do my master's degree when I was 21. Soon after that, I went after working at major corporations because that's what we do. We study and then we get jobs. But later on, I think as I got more into the network of understanding creation of startups, got my MBA, met the people that I need to meet, and expanded into, I can build technologies, I can build products, I love it. Maybe I can build companies too. So I think it's not an overnight thing. It was definitely a process for me to get there.
Yeah, no, I love to hear that. And it's an interesting parallel with a lot of guests that have come on the show, which is that for so many people, there's not a direct path, right? Like you weren't just born entrepreneurial. It takes sort of a layering of knowledge over years to finally get to where you're trying to go. So I think it's interesting in your story that it was sort of that same route. So do you mind talking about, I mean, you mentioned doing work, for the people who are of low vision. How did you get to doing something in the AI space? Because there's, multiple components to your product, and we'll let you talk about that. But one of the things I think is particularly interesting, or one of the use cases of your product, and for people who are listening, it's called personal.ai. And there's a component of it that's sort of about preserving and prolonging memory. And that sounds very human to me, unlike some of maybe the business cases for it. And so I'm really interested in what drew you to that, and if it's sort of, in your mind, the same as doing work for people of low vision.
Yes, it is indeed the same. My philosophy always has been, you solve the problem and not the human. So I think there is this tendency or the urge towards, when you know a piece of technology, then you go after, what can you do with the piece of technology? But if you flip the narrative around, I actually see a need in here. There is a problem. What technologies are needed to be able to put together a solution and put together a product and experience for it? So you asked about my previous company. I started that in 2015, and that came about with a friend of mine who, his name is Matt Brock, and he is blind. And we were constantly, brainstorming all the things about technology, potential use cases, to make his life easier, but more joyful as well. And then the Google Glass thing came out, which is a wearable device.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what if the camera that is sitting right in front of your eye could actually fill the gap of, seeing or interpreting the visual information and surroundings around you? So that was like a aha moment, and we created a company around it. It used both the idea of augmented reality as well as artificial intelligence, combined with like human in the loop. Essentially, a human who is sitting in front of the computer teleports into a blind person's world, and they see through, essentially the world for them, and describes in real time the audio description of life, we call it, for them to be able to negotiate with the physical environment, right? So if you think about just that concept, what use cases it unlocks for blind people, it's not just about getting from point A to point B. They already figured that out. They already have a white cane to be safe. It's about the experiences that are probably not, possible within the realm of the technologies that are allowed, such as, reading a children's book by a mom to his kid. Like, it's kind of an experience. Going to Disneyland and experiencing, not just the rides, but the fullest experience that it can provide. Independently traveling around the world, because you have that confidence now. You have that confidence of, there is Ira in my pocket. So that concept now stretches into personal AI very similarly with the same philosophy. If it was technology to augment vision, this is about technology to augment mind and memory. Why? Because, we create, consume lots of information, we lose 80% of it. So what does it mean if we are indeed able to augment ourselves with 100% of ourselves? What does it mean that for people around us? So I think philosophically, conceptually, it's about deploying the technology in the places where there is a lot of unknown. What if we give that visual information to blind people? What if we give all this like memory, synthesize it, and surface it for people you probably won't remember?
So so what I'm understanding is personal AI is a way to recall memories and things from your past. How does it gather the data in the first place? Can you break that down for us? Is it user input? Is it just an app on your phone that gleans information from everything that you do? How does it work?
Yeah, so that goes into how it works. You can imagine over a period of time, we collected personal data in our apps, such as text messages, emails. We probably talk to people as well. So we do have integrations into existing sources of data. But the fundamental experience is about, you come onto the app, you can talk to yourself, which is your AI, and anything that you tell your AI, it will remember. And you can ask questions, you can write with it, you can brainstorm with it, you can debate with it, everything that you tell. So now bring in your people, your friends, your family, your colleagues, your team members, your projects that you're working on, create your channels or lounges, like very similar to any other chat application, and then start having conversation. It will learn everything over there as well. To fast track or bootstrap, like let's say you are an author, you want your AI to learn your style, all the knowledge accumulate, you basically upload your books, you basically integrate into your email, you basically integrate into your messages. So anything that is personally that exists, and of course we have a roadmap of integrations, but conceptually, you basically come into the app, chat with yourself, which is your AI, tell everything that you want it to remember. You can bring in your people as well, chat with them. And as you have this communication with yourself or with people around you, then your AI will start surfacing things up for you, which you may or may not remember. So first of all, it is helping cognition, which is augmenting cognition. And the second thing is it is helping with time, right? Like if you ask me, hey, when are you coming back from India? Right? My AI already knows when I'm coming back from India. It's like, hey, what is your philosophy around AI? My AI already knows my philosophy around AI. So it's like, boop, boop, boop.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. Now, so what about like, let's say a study like this, because this is something I've been thinking about. So on this podcast, for example, we're approaching our 300th interview. We've talked to a lot of business leaders from a lot of different walks of life. And I think that one of the things that's really valuable about this show for people who listen to it is the insights they gain from these different business leaders and things like that, right? It's not necessarily what we contribute, but it's the treasure trove of knowledge that our guests provide. So what if we were to take something, or is it possible to take something like, I don't know, the recorded catalog of the show, for example, feed that into an AI and have like a searchable database or a discussion that you could have to basically ping it for all the knowledge of all our collective guests? Like, is something like that possible using a tool like this?
Totally. Think a step further. So if you are simply thinking about like aggregating the data and creating the models, yeah, great. That kind of exists technology and you can do that. Now, personal AI is kind of a no-code AI application where you can come in and create that collective intelligence and work with it and debate with it and have conversations as well. However, you said 100 business leaders. Sorry. Let's say every business leader has their own personal AI. When they come into the show, they probably have their own podcast. Like, right now I'm speaking, I have my own podcast. When you go into that, let's say the channel or, communication or chatting with the AI, when you ask a question or a debate, you have that attribution on which person is that thought constructed from. So rather than thinking about the collective intelligence, think about individual intelligence that has an attribution. It's almost like a virtual panel. Like, let's say if you have these 100 business leaders, 10 of them, and you're interviewing and Michael is interviewing, you're moderating the conversation. You probably ask, hey, you know what? I want to get a fresh perspective on AI in Web3. Suman, why don't you take that? But then somebody else, I would respond, and somebody else would probably say, I have something to add to that as well. So now apply that from a virtual setting, from everybody has their own AIs. When you are having the debate and conversation, everybody has their own perspectives. It may be the same topic, and then you add on top of it. So we are like really pushing the needle on individual intelligence, individual minds, and have this model tuned and be more like you. Of course, you want to put all the things together and then create a collective intelligence. You can do that, but our core strength is a 120 million parameter model that can potentially run on edge devices, that horizontally scales, that belongs to the person, that replicates them, and that trust is attached to that individual.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, as you're talking, I mean, I'm thinking of all the potential applications, the ability to listen to a podcast episode, for example, this one, and be able to sort of in real time ask questions of the guest. So like, yep. Maybe there's something Mike and I missed in our conversation, but somebody wanted to ask you, they could tap into your collective knowledge, for example. So,
totally. And you should do that with my AI. My AI lives in my app. So towards the end of the show, I will give you the link so that way you can.
Yeah, let's talk about it, because I would love to look at integrating that. I mean, because, like I say, I think it would be incredible if you could basically come as a listener of this show and, visit our website, for example, and have a conversation or ask questions of our collective guest pool, right? I mean, you could say, hey, I want to learn something, about hydrogen as an alternative fuel technology. Well, we've had a bunch of experts on that, and if they could sort of get into the conversation through these multiple AIs, that'd be very intriguing to me. So,
yeah.
Can we talk about the ethics of AI? There's a lot of debate on, like just giving all your data to this person or computer in the cloud, and it's like there's a lot of people that are skeptical, and I've played around with open chat AI and I think it's amazing. So I haven't personally used yours, but what can be accomplished with AI is incredible. Like just the few times I've jumped on open chat, I'm in fear of my job as a software developer going away. Like never me being a part of the equation anymore. Yeah. So like, can we? I guess I don't really have a specific question, but
sure.
What are the ethical pros and cons with a product like yours?
So first of all, I think everybody should worry about ethics, and one of the pride things that I take is just being, I think, the approach to how I guess we take a problem-driven things and use the technology and bring in technology. The reason I started with that is if you not start with the technology, but if you start with what is more important in here. With personal AI, what is important? We are talking about memories, right? Memories are very human, very personal, very private, right? So we got to start like respecting that. So if you think about all this data that you are giving from Twitter, from social media, from podcasts, from public information and knowledge, you're taking all the data, you're aggregating it, anonymizing it, collecting it, and then giving it to a model, which is this gigantic GPT-3 model, which is fantastic. It has its own use cases. But what it's missing in that sense is it's missing attribution, which is like, let's say, if I have concepts around AI and Web, and ChatGPT does say, or pick up, use that information that I wrote in my article, there is no attribution back to me because every data is anonymized for the reasons of like, large language model, which is okay. It is also missing ownership. Technically, you are contributing to it. Everybody is contributing to it. But there is lack of ownership. Everything belongs right now within, that particular model. And we are continue to feeding by virtue of like talking to ChatGPT, we are continue to feeding it, which is also okay. So there are particular use cases around like collective intelligence and collective knowledge by aggregating the data and analyzing the data, which is like public internet, like public knowledge. Now, if you flip that around and go into 180-degree to your personal data, if you were indeed able to push all the data that you are creating through the years and ongoing into the future into a model of you where you own the data and you own the model and you control it, then the ethics of that model is the ethics of that person.
Mm-hmm.
So we are flipping the narrative from, hey, how is this, like, what is this ethical constraints and what is the bias? Because then it goes down into, okay, what percentage of data, where is the data collection happening, who labeled the data, right? And the majority of the data collection, it's an algorithm. Of course, it will have bias. You will never be able to remove 100% bias because the idea of the bias itself is human in nature. Whatever is bias we think in here in this country is different from what we think in China or India for that matter. Mm-hmm. So it's subjective, right? So when it is subjective, you can probably have like a country AI where we think, oh, okay, this is culturally, ethically acceptable in this country, right? Or region, or a group of people. But to get the most micro level of ethics or bias or opinions, it has to come down to the individual level. So in a way, the approach that we are taking basically crushes all the issues that we potentially will have, because at the end of the day, how you behave to people, how, what your knowledge is, like how you act, how you respond is essentially replicated into this particular model.
So it's not a collective pool of conversations and data points from like Facebook and Twitter and different places like that. It's your own personal data for you, and it's built. Any biases, any kind of anything like that is pulled from your personal data. So it's not like it's not going to be skewed. I've heard that like they've tried to use AI and like pull data from Facebook, and it ends up being like borderline racist. Just so that's an interesting approach. I like that.
So in your personal model case, you're probably still getting data from the Facebook, but the post that you have basically written, right, which is replicating like your authentic expression of a thing, whether you're a supporter or not a supporter. But it's not taking all the agenda, for example, because at the end of the day, it's indexing, right? If I want to get my point across, I will index the so so many people doing the same thing, you will always have that bias. So I think it's a different concept, and we've been working on this for 2.5 to 3 years now, and luckily ChatGPT came along, and this general idea of communicating with the AI and the awareness in a way is helping us. So I'm thankful to OpenAI. And we finished our personal language models. This is almost like a parallel development, what was happening with large language models. We call our model personal language model. the analogous to GPT, which is a generative pre-trained transformer. For us, is a GGT, which is a generative grounded transformer, because every response is grounded within your own data. So yeah, so excited to be out there and telling the stories, and met you guys in the process of being out there.
Yeah, no, you make a really good point talking about Chat GPT, because for people who don't know what that is, it's basically in beta right now, but it's a chat bot that you can basically talk back and forth with that responds to you in AI. And I've used the platform, and it's pretty incredible. In fact, we were having a conversation the other day because my wife teaches English in high school, and the discussion is, will kids need to write essays anymore, right? Because basically you could go to the Chat GPT and it will write it for you. And what we came to the conclusion of, or at least one saving grace that it seemed to make my wife happy, is that in order to be able to write a successful paper, in part anyway, you need to understand what it's saying and what to ask and all those sorts of things. You need to ask
the right questions.
So if you're a sixth grader and you're trying to use OpenGPT or ChatGPT to write a paper for you, you may not have the depth of understanding to understand the output it creates, right? So you can write something, but it's not where your knowledge is. So if you as a human being aren't increasing your knowledge too, then you're not going to be capable of probably generating content that either fits who you are as a human, right? Your teachers will know if you've now written a doctoral level thesis and you can barely read at a second grade level. But anyway, so we were trying to discuss that because it basically is creating new content, so you're not going to be able to check it with like plagiarism checkers and things like that. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Suman, but it's an interesting topic, and it's near and dear to my wife's heart anyway.
Of course, I do have thoughts. So let's start with the writing essays, because that's where you started, right? When you're talking to your wife, writing essays, the student no longer need to write essays. But here's the thing. Let's say there are 100 students in the classroom. Let's say the writing essay is one, exercise about writing essays on the, cultural history of America, and how the individual perspectives are based on certain knowledge. If you go to ChatGPT and you give the prompt, you will get a generative response, and 100 people will do the same thing or similar things. So all those similar things are essentially one thing, right? So meaning it is giving you ideas. It's not necessarily giving you, a way out of it. So, and you mentioned plagiarism checks. It doesn't exist right now, but I bet you there are multiple different companies who will look for what is AI generated content and what is not by using AI itself. Why? Because if I give 100,000 different variations of writing an essay in a particular topic, you will start understanding that this is generated by the AI, right? So I think we should be thinking about OpenAI and ChatGPT and the idea of writing essays no different than the idea of information being publicly available on the internet via Google search.
Yeah.
Right. It was available before, writing essays. How many writing essays we'll find in the internet? Millions of them. But earlier, we used to we had to go to each and everything of them and probably synthesize and probably collect. So instead of reading from books, we were reading from the internet. What AI is doing, or OpenAI is doing, is basically constructing all that and synthesizing and giving you that information. It's basically an efficient way of gathering it. It's no different than Google. 30 years ago, it was inefficient even more, because then we had to go multiple different places to gather that knowledge. So I think the key in here is it's not about worrying, will it replace writing essays? I don't think so, because there will be checks, there will be balances, similar to how when we were kids, calculators don't use calculators. But then later on, it's use calculators, because you know why? It doesn't really matter. You'll just do things faster. It requires still that human cognition for you to invoke. So I don't know. I think the idea of humans building things, it always will be on technology. Technology is just a foundation. Yeah. And whatever we create, it will be creating on top of it. Even if you have robots and AGI in the future, we will be creating on top of it. So we should not be worrying about technology. We should just be worrying about, okay, now I have this. What are the things that I create on top of it?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I mean, it does really, I guess, speak to sort of the short memory of humans, like how technology has been going. I mean, basically everything, right? The car was going to be the end of the world because it was going to put, horsefarers out of business. And, I don't know, the ship was going to put the next guy out of business, and whatever it was, right? And so as you moved through the sort of industrial revolution, I mean, this advancement of technology has been doing exactly what you're saying, right? We build a car and then we build the industry on top of the car. And then, we look for the electric car and then we look for the, whatever car. And so, I mean, it's interesting because I guess I hadn't thought of it that way, but I think that's right. And I think too, like in using Chat GPT, for example, I started to recognize patterns myself, like in the way that it starts a sentence or the way that it ends a thought. And so I think that, to your point, they will be able to look at that and say, okay, this is, generated and here's why, because we have 100,000 examples of sentences starting and ending exactly the same or whatever. And so anyway, I think that that's a really interesting idea and should probably dissuade a little bit of fear, because I think that that's also one of the things around AI, right, is this concept that the machines are going to take over and all that stuff. And I don't know, maybe your thought is they will. But anyway, I think that that's an interesting topic because there is a lot of trepidation around this. But platforms like personal AI are making AI so accessible, and open AI and all that stuff are making it so accessible to your average person that I think we're starting to become more comfortable with the concept.
Yeah, I think we can talk a little bit about AGI, right? AGI and API. So because since you brought it up, the idea of AGI is what? The idea of AGI is there's so much information out there. If I gather everything collectively into like one intelligence, that must be super smart than any other humans out there. And in fact, OpenAI mission is just that. Like, I'm sorry. That being able to create an intelligence that outperforms humans, right? So that's their mission, which is great. So I think like the idea of open public internet, like essentially internet, is moving towards, can we create an AGI that outsmarts human intelligence? For us, it's not about outperforming humans. It's actually extending the human performance, right? Because for us, it's not about artificial general intelligence. It's about artificial personal intelligence. Can I create a intelligent thing that basically hangs on to me all the time, that extends my intelligence, not this general outperforming human intelligence? There will be use cases for AGI. There will be use cases for API as well. Now, let's imagine, we launch, we get thousands, millions, hundreds of millions people just creating their own personal AI. So everybody will get a personal AI. Now, fast forward that with like 100 years. How the history is understood or told from an individual perspective is going to be far, 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 far richer than a one collective intelligence, on how the history will be told, which is what we have right now.
So Ryan, let me give you an example of the difference between the chat versus like the personal AI concept. Okay, so like if you say with this podcast, for example, Ryan writes all the bios, all the information for this podcast. So if you go to the website, you want to read about our guest, Ryan writes all that up. If you went to like open chat and said, hey, write a bio about this person with this information put in, it's going to write it in its own verbiage. Whereas if you did it through personal AI, if I'm getting this correct, it will actually write it more like Ryan's writing it himself. Is that?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, as far as a use case goes, that to me seems like a very valuable tool to not only save time, but create content and do it in your own personal style versus having just this open general AI write it for you in its own style. It's actually emulating you and your writing habits. So Ryan could potentially take all the biographies and opening information for each guest, insert that into his personal AI, and now he's got an AI assistant that can write in his style. Is that?
Yeah, totally. That's exactly what you should expect.
Yeah.
It's not just the style, right? It's also the knowledge.
Yeah. Well, and so like it's been a couple of years now since I was in a real good habit of writing, but I used to do a lot of writing. And so in theory, I guess if I was creating a personal AI, just to use Mike's example, I could theoretically feed my AI all these past articles I'd written, right? And then use it to generate maybe ideas or maybe even a first draft of something new based on my collective knowledge of all these different things. Is that right?
Yeah, totally.
Can you, so Web3 is kind of a buzzword right now, and everyone's talking about it. I haven't done much research on it. One of the questions in the topic suggestions on your biography is AI in Web3 and how AI can extract utility and value from that. Can you break down Web3 for us and tell us a little bit what it is, how it works, and how AI plays a role in that?
Yeah, and we can stick to the same principles of, like, let's start with the problem. We started off with talking about memories, talk about like privacy angle, individual data, individual style. So if you stick to the same principles, one of the key things about AI is the data, right? So data is needed for creating the model. It's a personal data. Great. Web3 is all about, or at least the first fundamental principle of Web3 is data ownership. Everybody who is creating data on the internet, you would own it. If the data is a art or an image or a music or content or your model in the future, it's essentially data ownership that is giving back rights to you. It obviously has created a good market around the concept of NFTs and being able to sell the art because it's a discrete data asset, such as an image. So it creates an easy understanding economics around it, but it doesn't have to just end with just an image. You can expand the concept into audio files, music, MP3s, your mind as well into the future. So the AI in Web3 concept is pretty simple. AI needs data. Web3 has data ownership. So if the fundamental attributes of the solving the problem is individual data needs to be owning individual models, Web3 come into play. So for us, the idea of privacy, the idea of the ownership, how do we establish the trust with the human itself, so that they can walk away with their own data, they can walk away with their own model. Blockchain is a good technology to be able to solve that problem. So it's less about Web3. It's more about, again, what technologies will solve the core principles of what you have set out to do. And Web3 solves our fundamental privacy and ownership problem. And that's the reason why we started using it back in 2020. So at the core, every memory stack, which is essentially like a digital memory vault that we create for on behalf of the person, is protected by a private key. It's almost having a lock to your home, a physical key. So that's our response to, you're not giving away data to anybody. You're actually keeping your data. You're making, data useful for yourself. And you can imagine this as an asset of you that will start building right now that you can use for your work, for your personal, for your family and friends. But as it grows alongside with you and you pass away and that model lives, so the future generations can technically interact with you as well. So that's an asset that you would, basically transfer over to, your future generations, very similar to your physical assets. Hopefully that helps.
I like that. I actually, having this podcast, I kind of look at it as like a legacy kind of thing as well, because we're having so many conversations. If, I have kids in the future, Ryan's kids ever wants to come back and, re-listen to those conversations, get some input about their dad or this or that. That's a great way to do it. I actually was contemplating a business model where, you could have family members come in and have these long form conversations and store them in a podcast form for future generations. And this actually, it seems like a really cool approach, because not only will it store the data, but you can interact with that data and have a conversation down the road. How does it work as far as like a legacy aspect of that goes? Would you have to give that key to your kids and in order for them to get access to it, or you know, like Facebook has this whole thing where if you die, you have to give ownership to someone else or something. Like, is it the same kind of principle with this?
Yeah, except that Facebook still has access to your data.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Right.
yeah, in our case, we're basically removing the company out of the equation. So essentially, it's the ball is in your court.
I like that.
It's almost like having, you have a bunch of books and things behind you, right? It's almost like having the digital sets of data vault, in your pocket.
Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that legacy idea is a really interesting concept. We've done something very low tech version of that, which is our kids have sat down with grandparents who experienced World War II and things like that. And, and just physically recorded them and asked them questions about the war and what the experience was like. And then, played that back and that sort of thing. And so, I mean, this is obviously a much more robust version of that. But but the concept, I think, is something that's been around for a long time and would be such a great way to capture sort of the collective knowledge of these people, right? I mean, past presidents and past, anybody that's, has opinions of value, slap Elon Musk on there. It'd be nice to be able to ask Elon, what would be my best decision to make today, and see how he runs with it. And so,
Yeah,
I think that's a really interesting concept.
No, totally. I think there are a few people. There's one guy, I won't say the name, but he's 88 years old. And through the history, for some reason, he's been waiting for this technology. He gathered around 20,000 things that he wrote about his personal life. And he has this, he had this vision like almost 30 years ago. It's like, Suman, I knew this was going to come. I knew it. And that's the reason I've been meeting and collecting all these things. So now he's literally creating this AI, with the intentions that he would want his people to come and interact with him. So he's launching like in 3 to 4 months as part of our go-to-market. We are doing that. So it's already happening. And I think it's a good time to be able to do those things. One comment on the Elon Musk, right? So Elon Musk is a good example, but it may not be a personal AI example. Here is the reason why. Elon Musk probably has, millions and millions of interviews and data already in the public corpus out there, right? That means for somebody like ChatGPT or OpenAI, you can simply build a character on top of ChatGPT and create a Elon Musk AI. Personal AI doesn't have to do that. So if you think about like 20% of the people probably has this public corpus and data out there on ChatGPT, they probably can create those personal AIs. Like Elon Musk personal AI can simply be done by OpenAI itself because there is tons of data publicly available. But we are missing out that 80% of everyday people who would need to benefit from this AI. So our goal is a personal AI for everyone. Everybody should be able to get, like, who are not comfortable, who are not writing articles, who are not doing podcasts. Like, there's so many people out there who are just not, Elon Musk.
Right.
So what if all those people has their own personal AI?
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe this is a differentiator between personal AI and sort of AI in general. But it seems like too, like if you were looking at a model where you had sort of a collective knowledge of Elon Musk put in one place, like, I don't know, maybe I'm not smart enough to ask the question that would elicit the answer that I want, right? Like, so maybe I'm trying to get something forward looking, or I really want Elon's thought on something I'm trying to do, but I don't know how to ask the proper question to elicit the proper response from the AI, right? Like, it's kind of unnatural. Like I think of things like Midjourney, people are creating all this artwork, but to create the artwork in Midjourney, I mean, you almost have to figure out a whole new language, right? You have to talk to the AI in such a way to get certain output.
Yeah.
If you don't have that tool, and maybe it's even the same in ChatGPT, right? To get the certain kind of output you're looking for, or to try and glean the knowledge you're trying to glean, you have to be able to ask the right thing. And maybe personal AI is better about that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So we think about it as you don't talk to the AI, you talk to the human. What does it mean? So let's just think like parallels, right? Let's say you're a human, you go to ChatGPT, you're talking to a bot. There are multiple problems with it. First one, you're talking to a bot and So that means there is friction. Like, it's a bot. So you don't respect it as much you would respect that human. And the second thing is you don't know what to ask. And even if you ask, like, you're continuously like trying to figure out and extract an answer, which is useful for certain applications because, like, let's say if you're writing marketing content or if you're looking for ideas, it's perfectly fine. I think what we are trying to enable is this goal of ambient recall, like ambiently surfacing the relevant pieces of information that may be useful for you in a human-to-human conversation setting. So let's say you and me are having conversation, we should get you on personal AI after this. And you ask me, like, Suman, by the way, I missed your simple things. I missed your bio. Like, where did you grow up again? Like, what is your dad's name, right? And in those scenarios, when you ask me that question, or when when you're talking to me, naturally, my AI will provide me those suggestions. It's like, because it's my AI. It's like I already learned tons of information about me, and then it will suggest and I'll say, okay, yeah, send this thing. Or otherwise, if it is in autopilot mode, because I trust you and you trust me, it will automatically send you that information. So you're not coming there to talk to the AI, you're coming there to talk to me. But my AI is augmenting me and my responses and my time and my cognition, which is more, trustworthy. So I think that's kind of a, I guess, alternative approach to how we incorporate AI into the mix. So I call it like human to human conversations with AI in the loop. It's not human to AI conversations, which removes like the human to human part of it outside.
So, say for example, I go and sign up for personal AI after this conversation. How do I start interacting with it? What is like the first steps of getting your AI built? And then can you break down cost for us? Because this almost seems like it would be too expensive for the average person. And it almost sounds like too, once you get it built and you're kind of reliant on it, the more you feed it, the more data it's going to require, the more space it's going to require. Does the price go up off of that?
Yeah, totally. So I will premise by saying the cost of an interaction to a chat GPT is 10 to 20 times more than the cost of an interaction to a personal AI. Because at the basic level, personal AI models are 120 million parameters. ChatGPT models are 170 billion parameters. So we have an advantage over there in terms of the cost. And it is also designed to run on your edge devices. So in the future, this idea of interacting with your AI is in your phone with your own model. That technically means like zero cost because nothing is going out of the cloud. But to answer your question, today we have you can basically sign up, go into the application. It's a $40 per month subscription today. And you can literally start telling about yourself to your AI and it will start learning. I think I can, because we put a press release out there like last week, I can probably disclose this, which is within, I guess, like very soon, we will be releasing a free version as well for anybody to be able to create their personal AIs. And over time, they will be able to, subscribe or pay more for maintaining the number of requests with AI. So we would never want to charge for the data or for the model itself. We will be charging for the inference in the future. So that's the way to think about it. It's like it's think about like what would you pay for your mind to live forever in the cloud?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. I wanted to ask too, I mean, in terms of onboarding and training, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the process, get in there, talk to yourself and figure out how to build that out. Does the system provide prompts? Like, I mean, can we upload documents? Like, how do we actually get all of us in there? Like if you're a Seth Godin type and you've got, 100 books on all kinds of things and you would like to capture your collective knowledge in your AI, how do you, I guess, get it all in there short of, reading your books back to your phone?
Yeah. So You can essentially upload documents. You can upload audio files. You can integrate with your Google Drive. We are trying to fast track that. We will be releasing a Twitter sync pretty soon. So people who like to tweet. And the future integrations you can imagine, but I will probably not promise anything on the podcast. There is a roadmap of things. Eventually, the goal is getting the data is an engineering problem. The science is the personal language model, which we have solved. So I think as we evolve and as the company evolves, as we, raise money and go through the financial rounds, we will make that process smoother. But as of today, yes, you can upload the documents, you can upload existing things, you can sync with your Twitter, and we'll be releasing a big version of the app. I was talking about the launch that will happen very soon.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think that that's obviously one of the big challenges, right? Because I mean, to ask a person to go back and recall or regurgitate everything they've written down over years would be trouble. So it makes sense to me that you would go.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Okay. And so like you say, moving audio files up, for example, and maybe this goes back to our discussion earlier about how a creator might use this. And I have a follow-up on this. But like in the example, say I want to upload the audio from this show. Does your software already have the intelligence to be able to tell me from Mike from you, or recognize that there are other voices on the tape, or is it basically going to look at it all as one document that all belongs to me?
Yeah, we do have like voice print that it's not currently available in the app, but we do have a voice print technology where it will identify you how to create your voice print. Michael will create his voice print. And when we create, we can basically segregate the data of what is your style versus what is Michael's style. And it's one of the reasons why we didn't go after podcasts, because, there is data segregation, a little more like technology that needs to be built in. But if it is like text, like, simple interface where the source data already has an associated ownership, then it makes it super fast to get there. Like emails, for example, right? It's like, we already know like what Michael wrote, what you wrote. We already know, like in the iMessage or WhatsApp or Slack, there is the distinction. And voice is matter of just time. But the exciting thing is also not just like voice identification, but voice cloning. I will save that for later, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's one of those hot items, right? And I think it falls in the realm of the deepfake technology and some of this stuff. So I think it's another one of those things people are afraid of. And so for sure, it's a hot button one or a scary thing to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, we can always break it down and I think keep it simple. We start with reverse the problem from the person and the identity, then everything becomes like much more straightforward. If you start off with the technology and then the worriness of being able to create, why does the deepfake exist? Deepfake exists because there is millions of Tom Cruises out there publicly available in the data. And Tom Cruise has no control and cannot tell anybody to not use my data. There is like zero. So that's the reason why people who are technologically savvy will go ahead and create deepfakes. Of course they will. But the interesting thing is people should start owning their video content, their audio content, their article content, and say, guys, this is me. So if you create a deepfake, it is mine. So I think there is a fundamental shift on taking control over what you do on the internet. Otherwise, the deepfakes will, there is like a bunch of different applications today. You can simply create a character of like Elon Musk or, Sheryl Sandberg, because the data is public, like Tom Cruise. It's fun. It's great. But our focus is on that, like everyday people and giving them the technology so that they can control their lives and their experiences, their families, their friends, their colleagues, their projects, their teams.
Cool. I had another follow-up on the how a content creator might use this, for example. One of the big things, and I think I saw this on your website, is that most content creators actually don't make a lot of money doing content creation. But one of the things that people do is they start to build a community and things like that. And if you build a strong community or a big community, you end up with maybe too many voices and not the ability to answer, right? So people may be able to leverage a tool like this for having communication or having Q&A sessions, for example, that don't actually require the presence of the creator. And so I wondered if you talk about just sort of that as a case study, but also a little bit about just sort of how, I guess, sort of the one-to-many model works, how people could access this? I mean, does it work like a chat bot on a website? I guess it's more of a technical thing, but I'm just curious, if I had a community of 10,000 people and I wanted them to be able to ask me questions, how do they actually do that? How do they actually ask questions about AI?
Yeah. So personal AI application is nothing but think about it as Discord or Slack or WhatsApp or iMessage with AIs built in. So you can technically create your communities. You can invite people to your communities. You can have your AI continuously learning. You can use your own AI in the co-pilot or autopilot mode. And you can potentially, let's say you have 10,000 people coming in and there's tons of requests and your AI is handling, let's say 50 to 60% of it in the co-pilot mode. When I say co-pilot, it's like you have to approve that, yes, send it as,
Okay.
because it's a control, right? It's always a control. The autopilot means, okay, if you have 8.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. In that co-pilot mode, are you training the AI further so it knows, yes, this is a proper response to that type of question, or no, it isn't? Is it learning from your response?
Yeah, totally. So it's essentially like swipe right or swipe left. So that's the interaction you will see in our mobile app that is coming up. Basically, whenever you say yes, that means you are indeed going back into the model. It's like, these kinds of responses are okay by me. So next time, if you are generating, I'm born in India, go ahead and send it automatically, right? So I think that's the learning behavior you you should expect. I was going to say one key point. We have built in Web3 plus Web2 angle, which is once you have 10,000 people and there are a bunch of requests and inference calls, you can think about putting your AI behind a NFT as well. So you would have to own the NFT to be part of that community. So that's the monetization technique for the creators. You can also think about, instead of charging $400 per hour for somebody to talk to you for 30 minutes, you can think about, hey, I just want to run things by you, ideate by you, so you can rent my AI. So people can get creative in how they would want to use their AI and make money. So it's about, the key thing that personal AI gives you is elevating your personal brand and your thought process, right? Now, how you would use it for recalling, for creating content, for engaging with the community, for engaging with friends and family, or simply be able to save time because it automatically is drafting responses for you in this personal AI chat application. Sure.
Okay. And is there also a training going on or something where as people ask questions of the AI, do those questions start to fill a knowledge base, for example? Could I build a knowledge base of commonly asked questions, for example, or will the AI understand, variants of that question and respond accordingly, that kind of thing?
Exactly. Everything is learned behavior. And everything's learned behavior around you, around the individual.
Okay. Yeah, no, very cool. Well, so Suman, we're starting to get towards the end of the show. I wondered if you wouldn't just take a little bit of time and sort of break down where people can track you down if they're interested in learning more about either you individually or the product. Yourself, you're a pretty established entrepreneur. You've raised money, you've done all the things. So maybe entrepreneurs in this space will be interested in talking to you, or if they're interested in trying out personal AI, when and how they can get access to
it. People who wants to put down subscription and try it out. We are in the beta right now, so you can try it. If you simply want to wait for the free version to come out, so that you can have a little bit more, trial time before you commit something, I would say just wait for some more time. But right now we are collecting and talking to every person, who is subscribing and giving the feedback and trying to talk to the use cases. Generally, you can find me on Twitter at Suman Personal AI. And I would encourage people to actually talk to me on s.personal.ai, which will bring you to essentially my AI, but it's not just AI. You will be communicating with me, where I'll be having conversation, where my AI will be helping me. It's in the beta stages, but otherwise that will be a good place for finding me.
That's great. Well, no, we really appreciate your time, Suman. This has been awesome and great insights on AI. I think it's one of those concepts, like Mike mentioned earlier, Web3 being so buzzy these days, like everything is AI now. And so I think it's really good to get a little bit of depth on the technology and what it actually does, because I think a lot of people have notions of what AI is, and I don't know that everybody's notion is accurate. So I appreciate you taking the time to break it down.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening to my perspective. I'm sure mine is not accurate either, but at least everybody has their own, views and perspective on what they're solving for. I enjoyed the conversation, so thanks a lot.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.